there.
Hi.
We are the
Dyslexia Duo.
Each week, we sit down with amazing people, including top researchers and experts in dyslexia, powerful advocates, affected individuals, and more.
Together, we break down the myths, share real stories, highlight research and strategies to advise our listeners about this prevalent learning disability.
Come join us. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Aimee.
I couldn't believe that they agreed to do this. I honestly couldn't. We have some very special guests with us today, and we're so excited. We're going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves. The Spice Girls, right?
Spice Girls of Literacy. Hi. Thank you so much for having us. Nice to meet you, Melissa and Aimee. This is a pleasure to be here. My name is Faith Borkowski. I've been in education for quite a long time now, and I was a classroom teacher, reading specialist. I was a coach, a regional coach here on Long Island. I've written books for parents, and I also am a private consultant. And our latest gig for the last 3.5 years is the podcast, The Literacy View.
Wow, nice. Judy?
So my name is Judy Boksner. I've been in public education now. This is year 29. I can't believe it. 29 years straight. I've been doing it since I'm a 22-year-old little kid.
Me too.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't stopped. I'm more passionate than ever. I've been a classroom teacher for about 15 years, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, a literacy coach for many years. And I was also a reading specialist, do private tutoring as well. I'm still doing that. Faith and I also do consulting and coaching in school now. And we podcast together and we have a great time. And we're really honored to be here and really excited.
Oh, that's so nice. I think you have very similar backgrounds to Melissa and I. Melissa and I are both CALTs. I'm a CALT QI, which means I can train teachers in a dyslexia curricula, and then they can become a practitioner or a therapist or even a QI. I've been doing dyslexia in some way, shape, or form since 92. I was a 23-year-old baby walking into a setting, and I can remember in Texas back in the early 90s when I graduated, so from the late 80s to the early 90s when I graduated from college, it was whole language. And I was an elementary ed major with a reading minor, right, in grades 1 through 8. And anybody who's listened to the podcast for any amount of time has heard me tell the story that I was in my classes for my minor, and I remember thinking, we're learning all these great things, but I'm like, what if a child can't decode a word? Because I wasn't taught how to decode. I was the lucky few people who can see a word and learn it after 5 repetitions, right? And so it was just see it, say it. That's how I was taught. And they were still doing that when I was in school. And I can remember asking my professor in my class, what do I do if I have a child who can't read the word dog, for instance? Because I didn't know. I knew that there were letters in the alphabet. I knew some were consonants and I knew some were vowels. That's all I knew, right? And she's like, oh, you do this and you do this and you do this. And it was all this flowery stuff, not telling me how to take apart the sounds, the letters to make the sounds. And I go, no, what if they can't read a word? Not comprehend. What if they can't read a word? What do I do? And she basically said the same thing, but louder and slower, like I was the dumb person. And I go, no, what if they can't read the word? How do I help them? What do I do? And she goes, you look at the teacher manual. I was like, okay, she's telling me, should I? And I was like, so I just laid low the rest of that year. And then back when you had to do your courses and you'd have to enter it on the phone and enter your coursework for your courses in college, I made sure I didn't get her. I looked at my class catalog and I made sure I didn't get that same woman. Well, semester 2, I'd go in for the second half of that class and I'll be darned if it wasn't her again. She had gotten a divorce and changed her name. And I was like, oh my gosh. So she just already hated me. And I didn't know what to do. went to a classroom, and my first teaching gig was 4th, 6th, and 8th grade language arts. And I was like, and I had all these kids. I didn't know what to do. I put them in reading groups. And it wasn't until my next year that I was trained in dyslexia curricula, not therapy, but as a dyslexia teacher. And I was, oh my gosh, I could have helped this child. I could have helped this child. I could have helped this child. And I didn't know what to do. And I'm sure Melissa has a similar background, similar story.
Well, I do have a kind of similar story, but I think what's interesting is I never experienced working in a classroom. I only worked directly with dyslexic kids fresh out of college. So that's all I've really known. And I feel like there's some missing pieces that I have because I learned about how to teach them, but I didn't learn that in between, really working with them in the classroom and then having a dyslexic student. So just a little veer off there. But I actually wanted to ask you ladies, first of all, how do you make yourself look so young? Both of you look so young, because I need those skincare secrets. And then two, what has been your favorite thing up to this point of all of the different aspects of your career that has led you to where you are today?
Hey, so I do love good facial products. I'm going to start with that. I do go to Sephora pretty often, and I love Ole Henriksen's Truth Serum. It is like the holy grail for me. It's a vitamin C. Every morning before I go to work in the Bronx, in the schools, I get up in the morning, I go like this a million times, under the eyes, over the face, and then I take something called, I think, a gauche or something. It's like a rock or something, and I massage my skin. Yeah, fun fact.
Does it exfoliate?
It does not, but I'm hoping it prevents wrinkles, and I don't want to get Botox. So, yeah, so I'm trying to stay young.
Botox is the best. I love it.
Is it? I'll probably give in soon. Maybe when I retire, but yeah. So, and wait, I just forgot. The second part of the question was,
what's your favorite part thus far in your career?
I had two moments in my career that really define things. And one is going to be crazy, especially on a dyslexia podcast. One of the top moments in my professional career, or what felt like it at the time, was when I got trained in reading recovery. I can't believe that I'm saying that on a dyslexia podcast.
Right.
It felt like I was on top of the moon. I felt like this happened in 2013. I'm like, oh my God, this is the biggest honor of my life. I was on a stage. I was graduating with a certificate at NYU. I thought that I was going to change lives, and it was a very special time in my life. My kids were little. My dad was coming from another state to watch them, and I was learning at night until 2017, when I realized that wasn't the best moment of my life anymore. I realized that although I learned many great things, and I feel like it is definitely a big part of my story, I learned that there's way better ways to teach kids how to read. I think that I missed the boat in many ways on how to teach kids how to decode and understand how to read without the cueing system.
Yeah.
So although I thought that was the highlight, my real highlight is the Literacy View. This podcast that I do with my beautiful, stunning, amazing co-host, Faith Borkowski, has been probably the greatest adventure of my life. We are two women that were brought together by a complete stranger that is no longer in our lives. And Faith is one of my dearest, best friends in my life. She's a mentor to me. And I feel like we are changing the world. As a person that still works in the school system, sometimes it's really stressful. You want to make a big impact, but you don't have full control, especially in a bureaucratic school system. So the Literacy View has been a place where it's therapeutic. I get to get all my emotions out. I get to troubleshoot with the top people in the industry, researchers, educators, parents, administrators, superintendents. We get to brainstorm together. We have a growing community. We also do professional services. We have our own Literacy View LLC, which I'm really proud of. But I think it's been the most amazing journey in the world. We've gone to Oxford University together and presented at the World Literacy Summit. And yeah, it's just, yeah, I think this is probably the biggest adventure of my lifetime, is my moment with Faith Borkowski.
Nice.
I love that.
Well, I feel the same way. we just have a great time and it comes through. And I just love this time in my life. But probably the turning point. Oh, I never answered your question about the skincare.
Yes, because we're going to put that in the show notes.
So I've used Cetaphil my whole life, and that's how I clean my face.
All right. Do you do it morning to night?
It's, to me, it works and it's gentle, so I use it. As far as anything else I do, I dance, and that gives me joy. And I think joy makes you stay young. So I'm 60 years old.
No, you're not.
Oh, yes, I am. I'm 60.
Incredible.
And I've never had Botox or
Wow.
any type of procedure. This is it. So I do have good genes. That's
I was going to say, you've got great genes. Yeah.
I do. Yes. So, but
Faith, can I interrupt for a minute? I have to. She has good genes, and her mom's name was Judy, and my name is Judy. Isn't that a weird special coincidence?
That's a really neat coincidence.
A lot of coincidences. As far as that special turning point in my life, I've written a book about this, Failing Students or Failing Schools, which was part memoir. I started teaching in 1986. I was 21 years old, thrown into a third grade classroom, no subbing, just went right into a classroom in Brooklyn. And I started teaching third, fourth, and fifth, realizing that these kids really were coming up to third grade and couldn't read. And I was a kid myself, and I just was smug. Like, what's going on in first grade that these kids are coming up and they can't read? Until one day when I was teaching first grade, and I realized what I was taught wasn't working. And so I started to seek out ways to help kids. And then I found a speech to print method called phonographics through this book that I read, Diane McGinnis, Why Your Child Can't Read and What You Can Do About It. And that turned my life around. And then I ended up working with the Reading First initiative. I became a regional reading coach when George Bush was president and No Child Left Behind. And honestly, that's where I met all the literacy greats that you know today. And I've been at this for many years. And I'm sad to say we're in a similar place, maybe a little bit better, but not much better. I would have thought by this point things would have been a lot better. But in answer to your question, probably reading first and the training I got by going to Albany every month and being with a bunch of wonderful women. At the time, I was much younger, and my people I looked up to were probably my age now. So it's like that cycle of life, you know. And I love giving back to people. And I love working with Judy, and it's been fabulous.
How did y'all meet?
So we met, as Judy said, we met through somebody on the internet who thought that we both would be nice to work with and put together a presentation. And the presentation that she had in mind never happened. And instead of a presentation, we came up with a podcast because we all had different experiences and different views. And at the time, Judy was more balanced literacy, but I liked her immediately.
You really feel that way?
Yes, because she was open.
But I was already transitioning. I was transitioning.
Yes, she was already. But what I saw in Judy was somebody who was always willing to learn. And I said, I would like to do this with her because people need a model of this behavior. I was already at that point well into this. So sometimes me saying it almost comes off like, all right, you know this, you're there. But watching Judy be vulnerable in front of other teachers going through this, I said, now that's a winner. And I do think that's what works for us. The third person who originally was going in with us decided this wasn't for her. And two of us bonded.
Nice. It was meant to be.
Yeah, and it's funny, you know, when I first heard about Faith, I read all about her and I'm like, oh my God, she's so into the science of reading. Am I going to be accepted? I was so nervous. And it's just, I haven't looked back. It's been the best experience. I found that the science of reading side was a little overwhelming for me. At that point, I considered myself a centrist. I know you no longer use that term, but I was so afraid because I felt like literacy was like in camps and I didn't know where I would fit in and how I would fit in. And I found that online in general, people are so abrasive on all sides. And I'm not an abrasive person. I'm just a person that's looking to help kids. But yeah, I think our show is really important because it can't just be the same old people hearing the same old thing. You know, how does change happen? By really speaking to everybody. And that's one of the most important parts of our show. Anybody can come on our show. You could totally disagree with us and still be a guest on the Literacy View because we feel like if it's the same old people with the same old guests, with the same old views, we're not going anywhere.
So I was listening actually to one of your episodes. I had a lot of driving. I had to do like a lot of driving like an hour, 15 minutes one way, driving an hour, 15 minutes back. So that's perfect length for a podcast episode, right? I was listening to you. We're in Texas and we've had Texas dyslexia law in place since 1985, meaning you have to say dyslexia in public and back then they didn't have charter schools, but public and now charter schools. And if you say dyslexia, you have to assess for it in the school, and you have to serve the student in a dyslexia structured literacy curricula. But that's not the setting y'all are in exactly in New York.
So we had, I know what you're talking about when we had Michael Paff on
Yeah.
and Andrew. Yes. So it was never really in a written document. And in New York, plenty of us have gone through that same experience where we shouldn't really be using the word dyslexia. It was more of a specific learning disorder, not saying dyslexia. We've gotten a lot of feedback from that episode because every state is different in terms of their interpretation. But I think what we've heard more often than not, even if there is some sort of document, people don't abide by it.
Right.
And that's been a problem. And from what we see, people needed to know that they can get the diagnosis. The point is they don't trust it. They don't trust what's happening in the schools for a number of reasons. And there are people looking to change that. But New York in general is probably behind many other states, even though we have one of the biggest school systems in the country, if not the biggest. I think we're either number one or number two. I don't know if California has like LA or something, but I think New York City probably is the largest school system in the country.
Probably.
You know, another thing that I learned on that episode, which I thought was interesting, was just like reading specialists have to stay up to date with their credentials, school psychologists have to keep up also. And school psychologists that don't have deep knowledge of some of the assessment tools have to stay up to date with those tools as well. It's their professional responsibility as well. Right, Faith?
Yes.
We have our state handbook, and our state handbook dictates what the school system has to do throughout our entire state.
Yeah, but it's still open to interpretation. I've seen pockets of districts that kind of do what they want still.
Of course, we're doing things like this podcast. A lot of people are spreading the word. So parents are getting very wise to what needs to happen in the school. So they're going and they're fighting for what needs to happen for their kids. But also we're really doing a big push. We had something called a reading academy where the public school teachers had to go through basically structured literacy classes. And it was 15 hours, I believe.
I just have to stop you. The Reading Academy came out of reading first.
Oh,
You
did it?
probably don't realize that. But
I did not.
everything that people think now are new ideas have been around 25 years.
Well, that's wonderful that they're doing it now.
Well,
They should have been doing this a long time ago.
well, that's what I'm trying to say. That
Mhm.
unfortunately, everything that we've worked for, it wasn't disseminated to a point where people were just doing this. Everybody thinks this is new now, but it's really not.
It's like a trickle-down effect, isn't it? Kind of like the waterfall?
Yeah, I did reading academies when I was pregnant with Tyson, and Tyson's turning 27. And I was actually paid to go to the kindergarten reading academy, the first grade reading academy, and the second grade reading academy. And we bought new living room furniture with that stipend. I remember that as a young family. So they'd had the reading academy. It was just revamped and put online. But my only problem and if anybody's listened to this podcast before and has heard me say this, only problem that all these teachers were trained online, or some of them actually had coaches that they saw. They didn't know what to do with that information once they finished the academy. They didn't know how to apply it to the curriculum that they had. And so all this knowledge is sitting there and they're like, now what? Right? Because you still have to explicitly explain, okay, when this happens in your curriculum, this is where you apply this approach.
Imagine that's the same with letters training, right?
Yes, yes.
That it's, if there's one piece having teacher knowledge, and then the other piece is I have this knowledge, but how do I implement this? Because now that I have X number of programs, how do I manage to get all of this in place? So that's still a problem, unfortunately. That's the way it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you've talked a little bit about your podcast, but what do you hope your audience brings from it? What do you want? You want to fire them up for sure. You want to educate them. What else? Has anything else stemmed from your podcast that maybe you weren't expecting would happen?
Judy, do you want to jump in or should I?
So you can go first, Faith.
All right. Well, let's go with the first part of your question. So what do we hope our audience gets from this? We hope they get the truth, and we hope that they question what they think is the truth, because sometimes what they think is the truth is just because it's what they already know and they're comfortable with. And we try to encourage people to step away from their own biases, right? And to be able to look at this from above and to realize that, well, just because you've heard this before and you've been doing something for a while doesn't mean that there isn't new evidence or other evidence that maybe was unknown to you that needs to now be reevaluated.
Right.
And we try to encourage people to be reflective and to be open to change. And Judy is a wonderful model for that. I really give her a lot of credit. She really is honest with the audience. They love her. They absolutely
They love you too, Faith. They
No.
love what. First of all, you know why they love you a lot? Because your BS button is always fully charged. Mine is only charged. Our viewers send us BS buttons, and I still have BS problems. But Faith is always fully charged. One of the other really great things about our show that I think is so important is that it helps people like me that are still in the trenches figure things out. Because being in a school every single day, or coaching or consulting, we all still struggle with things, right? We don't always all have full control. And even this morning, when I got up in the morning, I was working on preparing a professional development for one of our sites, and I was going bonkers. I was tossing and turning at night. That's how much these things affect me on an emotional level, because when you know better, you want to do better, but you don't always have full control. So Faith said something this morning that stuck with me my entire day and posted on our Facebook community, which I hope everybody joins, the Literacy View, Real Teachers Letting Loose. She said, just because something is popular doesn't mean that something is right. So very often you'll see things posted online, and I'm going to give one example. I'm troubleshooting through sound walls. This is the hot new thing, especially where we are in the Northeast. Everybody's talking about sound walls. So then I started doing more research about them because one of the sites where I work doesn't have them yet. And I saw an article by Timothy Shanahan from 2011, and it said there's really not that much research about sound walls or word walls, but this is the trend, and now it's popular. And we're seeing tons of them come up with big, giant lips all over the place, like hundreds of lips. It looks like something out of a nightmare movie. All of a sudden, we're supposed to put 1,000 lips. And the researchers have already said that that's not what's recommended. But people are misinterpreting what is recommended. And Timothy Shanahan said something really interesting when we interviewed him last week. And it was in regards to actually a different topic. He said there's a big difference between when people hope something is true or when there's evidence that something is true.
Yeah.
So we may be implementing evidence-based practices or interpreting it that way, but there's a big difference between hoping something works and what the research is actually saying. So I think that's been one of the most important things about our podcast, really trying to make sense of it all, right? Because researchers are always putting out studies. And sometimes Faith will send me a study and I'm like, Faith, why are you sending me this 25-page document? I just woke up. I just opened my eyes. I have to go to work. But I think why are they putting out these studies is because people like ourselves have to bring this to life in our classrooms. And what does this mean for students? And I think one of the biggest parts of our podcast is like really interpreting it and interpreting all these ideas and all this research with our audience. Another example, Faith went crazy. Evidence came out that phonemic awareness, we were getting it wrong. Not us, but people were getting it wrong. And she said, Faith, I'll let you tell the story about what happened with
Yeah, I
phonemic
want to hear
awareness.
this.
Faith-
I think I know where you're going.
Well, look, from reading first, we knew for many years that letters should be attached to sounds. And then there was this movement where it started, where we were talking about advanced phonemic awareness. That term is not used anymore, but it stuck with people. And those ideas were being pushed all around in the schools. And then a certain program, I won't name the program, is based on phonemic awareness without letters, even though they did change and they updated. There was no evidence about this particular program that it was worth the time that it was taking in the schools. But we went straight for it, and we really didn't hold back. We brought on...
Faith, show them what you pulled out. Get that red thing out. What happened on the air?
Well, we called BS. We pressed the BS button on it, and we were not holding back at all.
At all.
And unfortunately, the person who was at the helm of this movement, he basically said that there were things in motion about it, but he did not do the actual research on it. He was basically piecing things together, and it was a nice theory, but people didn't look at it as a theory. They looked at it like it's SOR, science of reading. And there was a lot of money spent on this and a lot of time spent on it.
And you know what's interesting? People think when they don't like revisit or say, hey, the research changed, that it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal because it impacts everything.
Right.
And like, even I'm going to connect it to sound walls. So I see these lips, I see these mouths. I called Faith again in the morning to torture her before she went to do yoga. And I said, you know what? I'm thinking if I'm going to do a sound wall, because we're forced to do sound walls now because districts are wanting sound walls, I'm definitely not putting the mouths because the research is not saying that I should have those mouths. but I'm going to connect it to that orthographic mapping and spelling patterns because phonemic awareness, where the research is saying that sooner rather than later connected to letters. And fate gave me the green light that I'm doing all right. So I was like, when we know better, we have to do better. And we can't wait till a new program comes out. We have to be ready to shift and pivot. And how can we be ready to shift and pivot if we just take everything for face value? And just because like somebody's popular or somebody's idolized in literacy, so what? They're just regular people like you and me, and they have a responsibility.
Kids are a moving target. And our society is a moving target, and different people's home lives are moving targets. We can't put everybody into one peg. It just doesn't work. And I think that when you're talking about the word walls, I think about how when I was in college, that was a big push. Oh, we got to do word walls. That was all over the place. And I feel like this is a symptom, the word walls and things like that are a symptom of all of the misconceptions that exist related to literacy instruction. And I think that's where us as our teams are trying to dispel these myths one at a time. And when Aimee and I have had so many people on our podcast that have really honed in on the fact that reading has to go with writing, and writing has to have spelling, and we've got to have all of these integrated approaches. And I think that is, to me, from what I see, is one of the missing parts, is that we're not seeing that full integration yet of reading, writing, and spelling.
Right.
So,
And background knowledge has been huge lately. That's been the biggest push that I've seen for getting to that comprehension level is for, as dyslexia therapists, we work through a schedule, we work through a curriculum, and we can talk about the big five in the phonological awareness, decoding, fluency, morphology, and comprehension being the end goal. And I can remember training teachers in a dyslexia curricula, and they're not doing the comprehension or even listening comprehension or verbal expression. And I'm like, why not? And they're going, because they're going to get that in their classroom. If you have to provide explicit instruction in those first four in your setting, why are you not providing that explicit instruction for that very last piece? You have to teach the kids how to do the verbal expression, how to do the comprehension, how to walk through the fire, so to speak. And I think that's important. I think it's important to bring in all the viewpoints and talk about this. When I first started in this, we didn't do phonological awareness. We didn't do fluency. And it's been as we go through time since 92, when I started doing all this, as we've gone through it, I've seen different components being added. And the more we know, the more we know. And it's never going to change, and it's going to constantly evolve. That's my thoughts on that.
I think I do agree with you that all the components are important. Having worked with many struggling students, I think it depends on what the most important need is at the time. So when you have limited time with students, if the main skill that is a deficit area is not being able to read the words, and we have a certain amount of time, that's where I'm living. But for other students, after we've worked through some of this, then I'm working on fluency. Then I'm working on the language piece, and I might have used V&V, visualizing and verbalizing, or something of that nature. It all depends, because unlike in the classroom, at least from my experience as working through one-on-one work, you really have limited time. And so you have to make choices. So even though all the components are important, to do something well, sometimes you can't divide yourself up through that one session. That's the way I looked at it. I really assessed and decided where I need to go at that time.
Right. Absolutely.
And also, that kind of led me to my question. What I wanted to know about, how do you guys choose which kind of guests you do have on your show, knowing that you've gotten all this exposure with your own careers and what you've experienced through working with kids? what does that do to help you create your shows and who you want to have?
I'll start with that. So when we first started podcasting, we had like a whole spreadsheet and we would book guests in advance. Now it's way more organic. It is so much more fun. First of all, our show is based on articles and topics. We don't prioritize, oh, we need to get this person, or oh, that we don't idolize people. So it's basically topic related. And Faith will text me, this is who we have to get on. This article came out. And I'm like, Faith, look, how are we going to find their email? So Faith is on it right away. She'll go on Twitter, or she'll go on, or she'll look for their email, or now we look at ChatGPT. But it's really basically about what are the hot topics, what's breaking in news. We also now do something called controversial conversations, also known as CON, where it could be a couple of articles that are very controversial in education, and we don't shy away from it. We tackle all of them head on. We've also done episodes where like something crazy is written about somebody or something, and that person will reach out to us and be like, hey, can I come on the Literacy View? Because I saw my name in this article and I have something to say about it. So that's been really fun, right, Faith? Remember, we had Nell Duke on once. That was like a hot topic. I don't even remember what happened with that one, Faith. You remember?
Yeah, I think it was Dr. Sam and company were basically saying that Nell Duke was in their camp with a certain idea. And she was like, don't include me. I never said that. It was written. They wrote an article, I think it was for the reading teacher. And she came on our show to clear up the misconceptions about that. That was a big episode when we had.
That was a big one. How else do we find guests, Faith? Like, what do we do? How do you see it, Faith? Besides texting each other at 6 in the morning or at 9 at night?
I think you already said it, that we really go by topics and what we think needs to be addressed. And then we say, well, which person would be the one we want to get on to talk about this? And sometimes it's an unknown. We just had somebody on our last episode, it was our last one, who spoke about AI. And probably most people don't know who he is, but
he's awesome.
Excellent, great guy, John Stallcup.
I was listening to her.
He was really such an
Brilliant
interesting man, brilliant guy. Obviously, sometimes it's great to have a well-known person on, but we're not in the business of trying to just do that.
It's funny because like
topics.
Sometimes we've tried like a different approach where we would just meet people and then just put them on the show. Those episodes don't do as well. People want interesting topics. People that care about education want to discuss what's happening in the field, the research that is out there. So really our approach is articles, research, topics, then think about the person.
Is there any topic that you feel like parents want to know a little bit more about?
Well, I think parents just want help for their kids. And that's the bottom line. They just want their kids to read. They get messages at school that they then find out later, much later, didn't work for their children. And then they clearly want answers. So I think they look to people they trust. And I'm very proud to say that I think our brand of no BS really appeals to parents as well because they trust us. And even if we don't have the answers, we will say, we don't know. We don't have that answer, but we will try to find out. But many times we do have the answers and we work very hard. I know I am very much about parents, that my books are geared to parents. I feel that parents are the ones that stir the pot in everything. We need parents to shake things up. And clearly, they've made a difference with all the dyslexia groups out there. I think all the dyslexia moms, that's what we call them, and dads, have done more to change what is than they're given credit for, because they were really the original, the OGs of this movement.
The OGs of the OGs, right?
Yes, the OGs of the OGs, right.
I agree.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Hi, this is Aimee Regenroth, and as part of the Dyslexia Duo podcast team and owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services, I want to talk to you about my business. Our COUT-trained team offers expert virtual or in-person therapy located in Prosper, Texas, using proven dyslexia curricula like Take Flight, Build, MTA, Alphabetic Phonics, and Reading by Design. We also provide crucial independent evaluations and advocacy services. Don't wait. Empower your child today. Visit www.discovereed.com to learn more. That again is www.discoveread.com. Discovereed, covering all your dyslexia needs.
Hi, this is Melissa with Kids First Dyslexia Services. I am excited to share with you my private practice. Kids First Dyslexia Services is a private practice that specializes in dyslexia therapy. Each one-on-one session focuses on instruction specific to your child's needs in a nurturing environment that develops self-esteem, builds confidence, and fosters a sense of accomplishment, resulting in happier kids with higher levels of achievement. We provide a professional, personalized experience, always putting the child first. We value the relationships with both our students and parents, because strengthening skills and overcoming hurdles to achieve desired goals and success is a team effort. For more information, please visit www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com. That is www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com.
Let's return to the show. Interesting. Had doing your podcast changed your views on much or anything? Probably not about how students or children should be taught to read and acquire reading skills and writing skills, but has it changed in any other way?
Judy, you want to start?
You can go first.
I notice she passes it to me when she wants to think a little. Hey, so what has changed? I'll tell you what has changed. When I was much younger, I used to think that science alone would change people's minds.
Yeah.
That all you had to do was say there's evidence for something, and that alone would work. At this point, I know that doesn't work. Nobody cares. Like if they're set in their views, you could give them a ton of evidence. That does not move the needle. Emotions move the needle. Feelings move the needle. Giving them a piece of paper that says, see, it's like smokers. When they get that label, smoking is hazardous to your health. Well, yes, that's good to put on. That kind of clears up any misconceptions. But do smokers stop because they see that label? No. Usually it's because someone close to them gets sick or they get sick. And then it's never really about research that changes people's minds. That I learned the hard way. So that's pretty much where I am now.
And for me, I think that I've learned through this podcast that there's so much BS on all sides, not just the balanced literacy side. There's just as much BS in the science of reading world, and learning how to navigate through it and just not accepting everything at face value and continuing to ask questions is still just as important today, because like I'm seeing different programs come out, curriculums come out, and not just accepting everything at face value. I think that's the biggest thing that I continue to learn, especially because of this podcast. There's nothing I don't question anymore until I bring it into those classrooms, because our kids deserve better, because I'm not going to make the same mistakes that I made before again. And if I do make a mistake, I'm going to quickly reevaluate, say I made a mistake, and then shift. And I think that we owe kids that responsibility. I think that there's a lot of confusion going on in the science of reading world right now. And there's people that are influencers or social media people or people that work for publishing companies that sound like the loudest voices. And very often, because they're loud or they have a lot of money behind them and so forth, way more money than Faith and I do at the Literacy View, right? We're self-funded, unfiltered,
Same with
unafraid.
that.
But, you know, those other voices, sometimes they sound more powerful. But look, read between the lines. See who is funding something. Think a little bit more carefully before you think, oh, they must be right or that must be right.
What do you think is the confusion around the science of reading?
People want to hold on to what their research says. If they're researchers, they have egos. And they don't want to admit, well, maybe things did not go the right way. Or look, just because it says science of reading and they slap a label of SOR on it doesn't mean it really has evidence behind it. So everybody follow the money train. Like, you have to really check things out. And just like whole language shifted to balanced literacy, and the same way, like when I was in Reading First, it was called SBRR, Scientifically Based Reading Research. Now we just call it SOR. The labels change, but you have to really pare it down and know that people are behind some of these things. Publishers, researchers who want to make sure they still have a good name and they're doing the right thing. Publishers who want to make money. So, like Judy said, you really have to be careful.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that is like the key focus for our podcast is pedagogy is number one for us. We've said it since episode number one. It's best practices that align to the science of reading, you're empowered. Because you know what? These programs, they come and go. Today, this is hot. Tomorrow, it's not. But if you empower educators to know what are best practices aligned with the research and evidence, you can change the world. You really can.
One of the things I see is that teachers want this knowledge. They finished college, they didn't get what they needed in college, and they want this knowledge. And they either to pursue it, it costs a lot of money, or their admin says, no, we don't need to do that here. And it just breaks my heart for these teachers who want that. I have a lot of teachers who are paying out of pocket to become dyslexia therapists. Teachers don't make that kind of money to go off and do not only an additional sort of college degree, but then this advanced certification. I really do think districts should support their teachers a little bit more in some of the, not just the science of reading, but what dyslexia is, maybe additional Orton Gillingham approaches, things like that. That's kind of what I think. And I think hosting a podcast is a super powerful platform to get that message out to additional teachers, to admin, to policymakers. So what has been your approach? What has been your impression about hosting a podcast? I know that, funny story, at least to me, when I was getting on the plane to go to IDA, Georgia, I was standing in line, and it was obviously a lot of teachers from Texas going to IDA, Georgia, and because we were all in the cheap fare. And being out there, and I heard one gal who obviously looked like a teacher. She goes, well, I guess it's a good time to download my podcast. I haven't gotten to listen to the new episode from the Dyslexia Duo. I go, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing that. And I almost went, this is Aimee. No, I didn't do it. But it's a powerful, far-reaching platform. What have y'all felt from doing this podcast? What effects have you felt at the far reach that you?
I'll start. Faith, you said I don't start enough, so I'm starting. I think we've made friends literally all over the world, and that is the most special feeling in the world, that there's a silver lining after COVID, right? now we're talking to people in different countries, like Carl Hendrick. He's in a different country. Now he's our friend. He can give us advice on the science of learning. It's just the most incredible feeling in the world that we're reaching so many more people, that we're meeting more people, networking. And it's like this podcast is a place of professional learning for our audience, but it's also professional learning for me. Every time I get on the air, it's like, wow, I'm at another professional development session that is not boring, that is not a slideshow, that's actually an authentic and real conversation. Because how many more conferences even can you attend where it's a slideshow after slideshow and you're sitting there, and we know that the brain checks out, and that's not even the best way for learning based on explicit instruction.
Right.
And that's why Faith and I, we have a different approach. We want to do things differently. So we're doing retreats with our audience. We're doing interactive sessions. We're doing professional training that looks and feels different. Application is prioritized, game shows, and also, where you're going to get down and do some yoga maybe, or do some dancing after, because you go to these events and it's over and over again. It's the same old snooze fest. And think about it. How many conferences have you attended and you're like, wow, this is incredible. And then you come back to work and everything is status quo. You don't have time to apply what you may have heard about.
Right.
You're just trying to get through the day. So I think that this whole podcast adventure just shows that learning can look and feel so much different. It doesn't have to be the same Google slideshow. Podcasting is the most powerful form of professional learning out there.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, we know so much now about what the brain can hold on, and spaced practice and retrieval. And honestly, a conference goes against every one of those things. You're being overloaded with a million different topics. You walk away with scattered knowledge. You're not being tested on it in any way. Unless you choose to self-test to see what you remember, it's forgotten, and you have a grand old time. It's great. And how much is actually implemented? So I think, at least with podcasts, it's a library for people to be able to return to different topics, and it's always there for them. And they could go, Judy's making a playlist for us now, really delve into a topic deeply. So I do think that, what we preach, we should practice.
And I think also podcasts are so great because you can learn at your own pace.
Yeah.
You can listen when it's convenient for you. You can pause it, come back to it. You can make notes. I'm like one of those people. I've got to look at what everybody else in the room is doing at one of those conferences, and I'm not probably paying attention as we go. So if I'm on a podcast, I can listen and pause when I'm getting distracted and keep going. So that's what I like.
You could fold laundry. You could be in your, you could be in the shower. Yeah, you could drive your car, or you could be in the shower. I just hung like a Bluetooth speaker. My son told me to hang one in my bathroom. So I put the speaker on. I'm in the shower. I'm usually not listening to literacy podcasts, though, in the shower. Faith is retraining my brain to listen to things that are fun, like Mel Robbins or Jay Shetty or different things like that. But
yeah, good. Well, I'm glad to know. I guess you won't be listening to us in the shower, unfortunately.
Well, I might. You know what? Right after we finish recording, I might hop in the shower and then listen to an episode. You never know.
That's funny. Okay, so I do have another question about talking a little bit more about structured literacy, because we've been talking about that quite a bit. How do you think teachers who are new to structured literacy should be starting to implement those procedures? What do you guys think about that?
I think they should do it at their own pace, slowly working through different parts until they feel comfortable, instead of trying to tackle everything. That doesn't work. I think coaching should be something that's continuous, not a one and done. And I do think that just the same way we expect kids to get feedback and immediate feedback and practice, the same should be true for adults as well. We should be making sure that our teachers have time to process, not expect them to get a program. Oh, here's the book, the manual, have a good time, go off and do this. We know that doesn't work. And teachers, just like children, have fears. And usually the ones who are the most resistant are the most fearful. They don't want to be pain in the necks. They don't want to be rebellious. They're trying to protect themselves because they're fearful of failure. And instead of really saying, you know what, this teacher needs a little bit more attention. Maybe she's been around longer. It's harder for her to change. Or the brand new teacher who is so overwhelmed that throwing one more new thing is just going to send her off to say, I'm finding a new profession. We need to really look at people and human nature and how adults learn as well. And we have to give them that time to process. I don't think we're understanding enough of how humans, whether they're children or adults, need that time to really work through things.
I agree. I agree with that. So thinking about students identified with dyslexia, some parents, like most of the mamas that I work with, they've known since preschool years. Maybe they can see a family member in their child. And some they're shocked. They weren't expecting this identification. I've seen the gamut when it happens. What advice would y'all give to a parent, maybe, whose child has been identified with dyslexia?
I'm going to let Faith start. I know this is an area that's so, so, so dear to her. And she's done so much advocacy for parents and families with two of the books that she wrote and so forth. It's dear to my heart, but I want to give this one to Faith.
So, look, there are so many situations I've encountered where parents knew, they mentioned it to the school, something's not right, they feel it, they might not know that it's dyslexia, but they know something is not right. And their feelings have been pushed to the side, saying it's developmental, give it time, let us work with him, don't worry, the usual types of things. I think people are getting better at that, honestly, than when I first started teaching. But we're not there yet, for sure. There are still plenty of parents who get that message. So all I'm going to say to this is trust your gut. If you're a parent out there, if you're feeling something is not right, it is not right. And just because someone is the professional on the other end doesn't mean that person is right. Often they don't know. And that's just an easy answer to say, give it time. I would say, go with what your instincts are and start doing your research. And what I mean by that is instead of going there about your own child, go in there more like you're this knowledgeable person about what the issues are. What are the symptoms? He's like classic textbook of what I'm seeing. So what you're doing now doesn't seem to address my child's needs, but I'm sure there are others out there. The problem is that most parents don't want other people to know.
Right.
They feel embarrassed about this. What I would suggest is get over the embarrassment because you're more powerful when you start grouping together with other parents in the same boat as you. And that's how you make change, by really not doing this by yourself, but trying to get other people together and start trying to really do this in an organized way. Don't get angry, even though you have every right to be angry. But people tune out those who lose it. Like, you got to try to stay calm. You have every right to be angry, but stay calm. Try to present it in a way that's bigger than just your child, because they don't feel the need to make change for one, even though every child matters. I'm talking to you from the school's end, that point of view. It has to be a bigger problem. So you have to get over that embarrassment and realize there are others just like you out there, and try to get organized about it.
And I think it's also important for that to happen. It happens more often, unfortunately, in wealthy districts and where parents are affluent. I don't see as much parents in poor school districts where I work in the city coming out and speaking up for their kids. We've had an episode on the Literacy View where my friend Isabel Simmons and Trey Hadrick said that sometimes there's a stigma in poor communities or there's shame. I think parents from all communities, whether they're wealthy, poor, need to come out and say, hey, my kid is struggling and I expect more. Parents know when their kids can't read. And even if you're a parent that can't read, when your own kid can't read, there's no shame. And I think that we can't just, unfortunately, and it hurts me to say, we can't just trust that schools always get it right or that schools always do their job in terms of literacy instruction. It's very hard for me to even say that, but, I don't think schools very often do enough. And sometimes there's not enough manpower. And some schools are given that diagnosis of dyslexia and some schools are not. Some schools will say kids are at risk. And then what are they doing with those kids at risk? So like Faith said, if you're worried about your kid, there's no shame, speak up. And if the school doesn't give you answers, Faith, what other advice would you have if a school's giving a parent a hard time and doesn't have the answers? What should they do next besides going to the pediatrician?
Well, that was one thing in one of my books I talked about, that it would be very helpful if pediatricians knew more about reading. That's number one. So that this way, this information starts to spread before kids even enter school. As you said, Aimee, these parents knew well before their kids even started that maybe there would be some of these issues that would be manifesting as they went on up through the grades. So that would be helpful. But since we're not there yet, where most pediatricians do not know enough about reading, it's really up to the parents to gather the information. Hopefully, articles, there are a lot of articles out there, lots of research, and try to bring it to their community school board meetings. A lot of the people at the community school board meeting, they're elected officials. Let's see if they're working for you. Let's see if they could help make a difference. It's not easy when you're going to speak to your teacher, because often the teacher is just learning herself about dyslexia. So it's not that the teacher doesn't want to help. They're just not in the position. And
That's true. And can I say another thing? And a lot of teachers are being told you have to work on grade level content. Everybody has to read the same material, but the kids that are really struggling to learn how to read need that attention to learn how to read.
Right.
And the biggest problem that I'm seeing in schools is very often we think that it's only kindergarten, first grade, and second grade where kids are learning how to read. But what happens to our third, fourth, fifth? And I know Faith has worked with many, high school students that still can't read. We can't just forget about those kids. And I think that unfortunately schools need to do more. And if they don't, like Faith said, we need to push and we need to go to those school board meetings, or we have to talk to the pediatrician. And then the other thing is a lot of people find people like Faith and myself, or I'm sure you guys, to do private tutoring, but not everybody has the financial means to get tutoring, and it's completely unfair. So how do we make sure that regardless of your financial status or so forth, you get the help that you need? It's really upsetting because I see many kids still not getting the support that they need in our country, and it's crazy.
One of the things I'd like to see done, because we have some grants in Texas, we have like a one-time grant that you can get if you're a student in special education, and they can use it towards providers or materials or whatever. And then there's other grants that we can do through IDA. But I had a parent in California reach out to me and wants therapy for her daughter who's never received any dyslexia support, dyslexia therapy, anything like that. And she goes, "How much is this?" And I'm like, "Well, this is how much it is." And she goes, "Hmm." It's like, I wish there was because I know what I have in Texas that I can say, apply for this. I don't know what's out there for California. I don't know what's out there for New York. I wish there's like a database of grants that parents could apply for their child based on state.
I think you have to start working on it, Amy. I think you have a good idea. And you said it first on your podcast, so own it. And I think run with that. I think that's an
Yeah.
excellent idea. I think it's an excellent idea because even I don't know all the answers of what to tell parents in New York where I am. Faith might know more, but I don't know all those answers.
Well, and that kind of led me to think about, are there groups that parents in New York can be a part of to help them be in a community? For example, like Decoding Dyslexia, I know that's a nationwide group, but do you guys have any other groups that are similar where parents can join together and talk about advocacy, talk about what they're aware of at the time, talk about Literacy View podcasts, things like that?
I know on Long Island, there are a couple of organizations that do just that. They try to educate and they try to help. There's an organization here also that works on a sliding scale where they train people to become OG providers. And
Mhm.
while they're learning, I think they have to pay to be able to get this type of training, but they get the money back if they follow through and tutor while they're getting the training. So it's almost like they hold the money up front. If they get through their commitment, whether it's a year or 2 years, they tutor, and then at the end, they get certified and they will get their money back. So I don't know if there are
Cool.
other organizations like that. I'm sure there are all different types of arrangements elsewhere. But like you said, I couldn't tell you what's going on beyond my little world that I
Mhm.
know of. It's hard to keep up. You're right, a database would be very helpful. There might be one. I'm not aware of one.
Not either. I'm not either. If somebody out there knows, let us know.
So we're getting close to the end of our show. I just wanted to ask you guys, what has been one of your proudest or most rewarding professional moments at this time thus far?
Well, one, we said our podcast doing this
Yes, yes.
was definitely a turning point for me. It was great. And probably next would be my experience with reading first. And probably when I actually published my books, I was pretty proud of that. And going to the World Literacy Summit was very exciting. It was a very interesting time for both of us to do this in Oxford. That was a lot of fun. But honestly, if there was one moment that I remember as far as working with a child, it was having a child, and I've had more children who have been suicidal and then turning their lives around. And I've written about that, changed the name of the child. But I do think when we say saving lives, we literally mean saving lives. And I've done it personally. So to me, that probably stands out the most.
Thinking about what you said just now, the new IDA definition, my favorite part about the new IDA definition is basically that last sentence talking about how dyslexia can impact into adulthood. I think that's crucial. I think a lot of people think that dyslexia really is just a reading, spelling, and they get over it after a while. I think it's crucial that it could impact employment later on. It could impact your social and emotional. I really like that statement, and that was the connection I made with the new definition.
Well, I would agree with you. Yes.
And then Judy?
So for me, one of the biggest moments of my life was attending the Big Sky Literacy Summit in Montana this summer. I was supposed to go with Faith, and Faith had some issue with her mom going on, and I was terrified and scared because Faith is like my ride or die in terms of podcasting. But I knew it was an amazing professional opportunity for our show to go and to network. And I went to Big Sky Literacy Summit in Montana. It was hosted by Nell and Terry, and it was amazing. And I got to meet so many wonderful people and have so many brilliant conversations and do live podcasting, which is something Faith and I are really passionate about. And we're open to different opportunities like that. But it was like, A, it gave me confidence. B, it was just the adventure of a lifetime. C, I did something fun right after the conference, go see the animals. And D, it makes me excited about what's to come with the best co-host in the world, because we are both very adventurous people and we'll text each other behind the scenes and say, hey, when are we going to Australia to see the koala bears and also do something that's related to literacy? So we're really open to different adventures. And I think it was just the beginning of what's to come for the Literacy Bureau. I'm really excited to do everything under the sun with Faith, my co-host. We want to change the way literacy looks and feels and sounds. And yeah.
And I want to just say something about that. I really let things slip with our podcast because my mother was declining. And like your partners together, Judy showed me over this summer what she was made out of.
I couldn't believe it. It was crazy.
And not only did she do this herself, but just how loyal she is as a friend. So forget the podcast, just her loyalty and her concern and how she picked up the pieces. And she never said to me, you're not pulling your weight here. She realized that I wasn't myself, and she just powered on and picked it up and really showed me what a friend she was. So it's interesting. I'm sure you two see that. It becomes way more than just getting on and just doing a show, that you start to really see what the other person is like, because it's like the most open, honest thing. You have to always be in contact with each other, and you have to work out all these issues and leave your stuff, I'll use that word, behind. You have to put it to the side. And it really meant a lot to me. That's all I'm going to say.
And I'm just going to say one more thing. And the other biggest thing was the adventure that Faith and I took a couple of months prior to that was to Oxford, England together. That was literally the adventure of a lifetime. I probably never had more fun in my entire life than being with Faith, her husband, my partner, Paul. We just had so much fun. And you know what? We did what is meant to happen. We didn't just go to a conference. We went to see Mamma Mia, the live interactive thing. And we were running because we almost missed the show, and we were running for our life together. I am running behind Faith. She's always 10 steps ahead of me. Those adventures, having fun together, meeting new people, going to pubs together in Oxford, hanging out with people. And let me tell you, the burgers in Oxford are not as good as they are in America. I learned that the hard way. But yeah, I just can't wait to keep having adventures. And I hope that Aimee and Melissa, you guys do adventurous things together as co-hosts, because an adventure with a co-host is the best journey of all.
I'm trying to talk her into going to England.
You don't have to talk me into going to England. You have to talk to the producer about going to England.
The little producer's her CFO, and he's kind of the purse strings.
Faith said to do it. I charged it on my credit card, and I said, let's do this thing.
Yeah,
That's
funny. Well, my goal is to get to England when William and Catherine ascend the throne.
yes, we
I'm
talked
go
about
there.
we
So
have talked about this.
we'll be there in the line. We'll wave as the carriage goes by. Something. We'll do something.
'Cause I know they're going to hone in on us.
We'll have our earphones on.
Our headphones, like we're doing. My little hand emoji keeps going up every time I do that. Okay, so now we have a new segment called the lightning round, and we're going to ask y'all lightning round questions and just whatever comes to mind. Okay, so you can both answer. So, favorite literacy or education related book?
I told you before, Diane McGinnis, Why Your Child Can't Read and What You Can Do About It changed my life.
And mine was Wiley Blevins, A Fresh Look at Phonics. Taught me everything I wanted to know in like 2 pages. And I was like, holy cow, there it is.
Okay, what's your go-to podcast beside your own that inspires you?
I think we'll both say the same thing here, I think. Mel
Mel?
Robbins.
Oh,
get-
yeah.
She gets on my nerves sometimes, but yes, I do like her. Sometimes I find her to be a little preachy, but she's okay. And I'm a little mad at her because she cares about dyslexia. She says she's dyslexic, but she actually turned us down.
I asked Mel to come on the show, and somebody else, one of her PR people, just said, yeah, she can't do it. And that was it.
Mel, you still have a chance. If you want to come on the Literacy View, we'll forgive you. And Henry Winkler, we asked you too.
Oh,
And
we
you were
did too.
dyslexic. You did too? And what
He's
happened?
he's a white whale. I'm getting to the point now, like he'll come to town and do like signings or go to SMU and do a lecture or something like that.
Come and talk to us.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'll bring a Funko Pop or something to sign it, and I'll slip you a card. And
You know what? They're missing out because
We're
would
fun.
give them a great a great opportunity.
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Coffee or tea or something harder, stronger, maybe.
Caramel macchiato, extra caramel.
There you go.
Ooh,
I'm very boring. Green tea, nothing in it.
Faith, I drink green tea now every day also. After my caramel macchiato.
that's a lot of caffeine.
Hey, there's a lot of caffeine.
My nutritionist said it's okay as long as my final cup of tea is at 3:30, no later.
I can't. I have to cut off all caffeine by 2.
I don't have any more caffeine after the morning is done. That's it. I'm very sensitive to it.
Yeah, me. I as well. I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning. I've even sworn off sodas now. It's just water the rest of the day.
Wow.
Thanks, man. It's hard.
Okay, one word to describe your co-host.
Oh, Faith is just really fun. She's fun.
I would say the same thing about Judy, but I would also say
Oh,
loyal
I love that.
person. She really is. Yeah, fun and loyal.
Can you text that to my principal?
It's hilarious. Okay, a quote or a mantra that keeps you grounded.
For me, this too shall pass.
Oh,
Because, yeah, I've gone through a lot of stuff this year. A lot. And so that's what I just keep telling myself. This too shall pass. The sun comes up every day and, it's a new day and you just have to power on. You can't let it get you down. You just have to move ahead. You got to keep going. And that's what kids have to do every time they go to school and they fail at their number one job, right? They go into a job. Imagine being kids. They go in ready to be happy and start the day, and they experience failure after failure. And it takes a lot. You have to get right back up.
most of the time they're still pretty happy,
It depends.
especially the younger kids. They overcome really quickly.
In some cases, I have met kids as young as kindergarten age who realize that there's a difference.
Yeah.
And again, this is a classroom setting, and they look at the other ones and they know immediately that they are not keeping up. And it does affect self-esteem. I'm shocked, but I see it in as young as K and 1 sometimes, but definitely the older kids. But even there are some young ones where they experience this.
So for me, it's I am enough. I always struggled with self-esteem as a little kid. The Literacy View has helped me overcome some of those things. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. I sometimes will think I'm not good enough, but I am enough. That's an important one. And one for the Literacy View. Challenging the status quo isn't risky. Ignoring the research is.
Like it.
I like that.
Awesome.
Okay, one thing most people don't know about working in literacy advocacy.
It's a grind. It's a grind. Be ready. Buckle up, Buttercup. It is not easy. It is not easy. And you have to have a strong stomach because you go into these CSE meetings. I don't know what they call it in Texas, but when you're meeting the Committee on Special Education and you sit around a table and all these people have something to say and the parent is just sitting there listening and taking this in. It's tough. It is really tough for those parents to have to deal with this. And you have to be made of steel. And you have to just let it slide off and get back up again and start again and not let it get you down. I have a parent. I've never seen a parent who is so relentless. Amazing. Still, her kids are older now. She's been doing this for years. And I was part of the dyslexia task force in New York, and she was involved as well. I was amazed at how she was still at it. And she hasn't gotten that far in her own district, but she's been a force in the bigger picture. But right in her own backyard, not so much. That's the way it is. It's tough. It really is tough.
And I think it's also important as a parent, have your parent concerns. I learned that it's very important to have your concern, put things in writing, and when things don't happen, hold people accountable. Then you have a paper trail. It's very important. Schools can promise you the world. I see it from my own clients. I saw it from my own kids. Have those concerns. Make sure those concerns are addressed. And if they're not addressed, you could always ask for another meeting and say, okay, remember when we had this conversation? Did this happen? Did this happen? Because very often these meetings happen and then things have to happen after those meetings. And if they're not happening, don't just forget about it. Revisit it.
Wow. That's
Thank you.
great. All right. What's next for your podcast? Any topic, exciting guest you want to disclose? Like sneak peek?
Faith, go.
Well, I think Judy mentioned him before. We are going to have Dr. Tim Shanahan on, and we are going at it with the knowledge topic. So knowledge is important, and people think if you question certain practices, you're anti-knowledge, which is the dumbest thing in the world. Who would be anti-knowledge?
Get your BS button out.
Right. And so we're calling BS on that with Tim Shanahan. So look for that conversation. And we have other cool ones to come as well.
Okay. What does the BS button say when you push it? Does it just say BS?
It actually says more than BS. I try just to use the BS, but it says everything.
That's fun. You guys have been so fun to interview. I feel like you've
Great.
brought a different perspective that I know that I haven't considered. I love talking to people from other parts of the country too. So thank you for that.
We appreciate
Very
you
welcome.
donating time and your time and energy because it takes energy to do a podcast.
Mhm.
So we both really appreciate y'all coming on a Sunday night on your free time and
Yes.
doing.
I'll
Pleasure.
add one as well.
Yeah, just say,
And-
make it so.
You know what? As we said, we go with topics and research. And when something comes up, and it'll be, let's say, in the dyslexia world, and we want to get people who are actually doing the work, practitioners, we will think of you guys, but we will keep you in mind. And that's how we work with everybody. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
That would
Yes.
be great.
yes, we will definitely have you on. It's really been a pleasure. And both of you are just really delightful to talk to. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
We appreciate it.
The Dyslexia Duo hosts are Melissa Dean.
And Aimee Rodenroth. The producer is Greg Rodenroth.
Dyslexia awareness is so important. Please share with your friends, family, and anyone who needs to know more about dyslexia.
Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and X at The Dyslexia Duo.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.